Welcome back, everyone, to the Go 247 podcast. I'm Glenn West, the senior writer here at the site, joined once again by Dylan Sanders. We got one more non-conference game before the heart of SEC schedule picks up here. One more home non-conference game against New Mexico. We'll get into all that stuff. But there's also been some pretty significant, or I wouldn't say significant, maybe just slightly interesting breaking news for LSU, off the football field. And then there's been some interesting kind of progressions as kind of this weekend's game takes fold. But we'll get all to that. But first, Dylan, how are you doing, man? What's going on?
Doing good. Just fitting into the football season.
Yep.
Well, yeah. Right now, as we're going, there's some college football on, Thursday night football. It's the best time of the year. We really are going to have football Monday through Friday, and Monday through Sunday, and I can't wait.
Yeah, no, it's a very fun time for everyone who follows college football, everyone who follows football in general. We'll be touching on a lot of stuff here. We'll get started here, but before everything kind of kicks off, we just like to remind you guys to like and subscribe on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribing wherever you find your podcasts. It always gives us a big jolt there and a big help for us as we try to grow this thing out a little bit. So any kind of contributions in that form would be very welcomed. But with that, I mean, we got a big game coming up here on Saturday against New Mexico. Obviously a team that, LSU kind of comes in heavily favored. It's a 32 point favorite for LSU, depending on the various betting sites. But I think it's one of those games where you're going to see a lot of players get opportunities. A lot of young guys get some opportunities. We'll certainly get to some of that talk a little bit later. But I think we should probably start with a little bit of the breaking news here. Obviously, the decision earlier this on Thursday that came down from the NCAA in terms of the infractions and everything. And it's in the case revolving former offensive line coach James Cregg. The details, the infractions were released today. Really just kind of a slap on the wrist, I think, for LSU. I mean, it was a lot of that stuff in there. If you kind of read the details of the report, was self-imposed. I think the big thing that was kind of released today was LSU got a year-long probation. They got fined $5,000. But really, a lot of the other stuff, they have a limit of the official visits now to 55 during the 2022-23 season. They have a 1 week, prohibition against unofficial visits in the football program. They have a reduction of 7 evaluation days before the fall 2021 evaluation period. So that's kind of already taken place. A lot of these things were kind of self-imposed, even before this report came out. And so from what I understand, LSU thinks that it came out very, very well as you could in this kind of circumstance. And I think it really helps, kind of their countersuit or whatever that is that they're trying to do with Coach Cregg, who actually won, $500,000 in a lawsuit that he filed after being fired from LSU because of these various recruiting violations. So, it kind of helps them out a little bit. I think probably one of the big takeaways that I have just overall is that this seems to be kind of a cooperation here from LSU's side of things, which I think really bodes well for the big investigation that's still really months away from having a final decision. The IARP that involves LSU basketball and the football programs combined. That's going to be the really big one here that we'll certainly learn more and more about as the months go on. But just really not much else to say, I guess, on the Coach Cregg stuff. I think we were all bracing for impact in the early morning hours when that news first broke. But as the morning kind of went on, we heard what it was going to be about. And so really nothing much else to touch on there. But other than, it looks like LSU came out pretty well in that situation. So we'll see what it looks like, I guess, with the big investigation moving forward. I guess with that, we can move on to actual football on the field and with the game on Saturday. We just got off from meeting with Coach Kelly on Thursday afternoon. He gave us a little bit of news, in regards to Kayshon Boutte. He will not be on the field on Saturday when LSU plays New Mexico. He's going to be, essentially expecting his first child with his girlfriend. So it sounds like they are in the very late stages of all that stuff. And so Coach Kelly gave him an excused absence for this game. But it does open up a lot of opportunities, I think, for some of these LSU receivers who are very, very talented, but some of them haven't really gotten going, I think, the way that they were hoping. So I guess with that, Dylan, you lose obviously a huge piece to your puzzle in Kayshawn, but you have a lot of guys there to back him up. Just talk about what you think that news, I guess, does for the receiver room this weekend.
Well, we've talked a lot about Malik Neighbors benefiting from all of Kayshawn getting all of the attention from the main part of the defense. So now it'll be a kind of a look towards next season where Kayshawn assumed to not be here. It'll be interesting to see how they handle a little bit more focus on Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas. So it'll be interesting to see who can really step out and if anyone can take over with the absence of the game-changing piece that Kayshawn is.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And I think probably the first name that I'm looking at, and as a guy that we wrote about this week, is 3 players to watch for our weekly series on just guys that we think could have expanded roles in the game. I think Jack Besh's name really comes to mind here as a guy that LSU could really, really rely on this weekend. It's been a little bit of a tough sledding for Jack so far this season. He dealt with the stress fracture in his leg for most of fall camp. He was really limited in how much he was practicing throughout most of that fall camp. And really the first 3 weeks, it's been a little bit of a struggle. He's got 2 catches, he's got a, nice touchdown that he got in the Southern game, but he was the guy. I mean, outside of Kayshawn last year, he was probably your most consistent receiver a year ago. And I think there was a lot of high expectations coming in for him this year. And LSU really, really wants to get him going. I know that much. Coach Kelly's talked about it a couple times this week, how they want to get Jack going. They want to get him involved. I think you're going to see him a lot in the slot. And I think, kind of one of the reasons I think maybe he hasn't had the, progression that many people thought is because Malik has been taking up a lot of those slot snaps and doing a really good job of slot as a really foundational piece for this offense. But I think they're going to be able to move Malik around a lot this weekend with no Kayshawn. It's going to open up a lot for Jack Besh. So I'd expect a really big weekend out of him.
Yeah, I'm just excited to see who steps up, and Kelly's mentioned needing to get Jack Besh involved more, saying that it's more of a coaching failure than a player failure. So this is a week, and this is the kind of opponent you're favored by 30. You expect to try some new things out, get some new players involved. I'm looking for Jack Besh to easily have his best game of the season, or at least have the opportunity to have the best game of the season.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think there's, really a lot that we're going to be looking at, but not really from an outcome standpoint. I think there's a kind of a preconceived notion that if LSU goes out there and handles its business early, that this one could get decided rather quickly. I'm going to be more interested in see how they utilize a lot of these players, in terms of just what their roles could look like moving forward this season. Could, some guys that are lower on the depth chart right now really play well and kind of work their way into some series moving forward against some stiffer competition. Name that comes to mind is Harold Perkins, the linebacker. I think his role is only going to expand.
Yeah, a note on him. I was looking at LSU's most recent depth chart release that they put in the game notes. And Harold Perkins is now officially the Jack 2. He's second behind Ojolari at that Jack position. So that's definitely a good thing to see, because he had a huge impact whenever he was on the field.
No, I agree completely. And Kelly was asked about this on Monday, I believe, and he said, "Look, it's going to be tough sledding beating out Ojolari for that Jack spot in terms of consistent rotations, but I think that you're going to be able to move Perkins around a lot, especially if you're playing with a lot of 3-down lineman rotations. You can get an extra linebacker out on the field, so keep Ojolari out on the field as well, and really have some great athleticism and some great speed to really kind of mess with some of these defenses or some of these offenses, I should say. I'm going to be interested to see kind of how Jay Ward continues to progress. That was obviously a really breakout performance for him last weekend. Defensively, I think this is going to be a game where it's going to be very run heavy. I mean, we know this about New Mexico. They're going to be very run heavy. I believe they ran it close to 40 times last weekend, and they threw it about 19 or 20. So there's going to be a discrepancy there, and I think you're going to have to really be locked in and focused if you're this front seven. You're going to have to handle the run, and if you can do that and make their quarterback beat you, I think LSU is going to be in really good shape defensively. But I know you had a chance to write a lot about New Mexico this week. That's kind of the assignment we've put on you kind of weekly here, is kind of getting to know the opponent a little bit. What are your thoughts on this New Mexico team, and just maybe a few players that you should be on the lookout for, and just kind of the overall look of this offense and defense?
Yeah, so you never want to overlook any opponents. We've seen major upsets happen already this year, but truthfully, LSU has no excuse to probably even give up a touchdown against New Mexico. At least the starting defense should not be struggling at all. They don't have an excuse. The New Mexico has been just, to put it lightly, terrible on offense the past couple of years under the same offensive coordinator. They were 130th out of 130 teams last season. They're bottom, I think, 115-ish right now. They scored 12 points a game last season, and it's pretty much it's not that different of an offense. It's at least the same system. So this is a team that is not known for their offense. So LSU's defense, with how good they are and how good they can be, should not struggle at all. They really don't have an excuse. But in terms of if someone is going to make an impact, I highlighted Jordan Porter, I believe is his name, wide receiver for New Mexico. He is a former teammate of Jaden Daniels. He was a 3-star coming out of high school. Had a ton of offers from top schools. He's athletic. He has SEC receiver size. He's like 6'2", 6'1", 190. So if they're gonna have someone break through in the passing game, it'd probably be him. But where this team really shines is defense. They actually do have a really good defense. So if you're LSU and you're hoping to find a rhythm, at least running the ball, their run defense is great. They have some fantastic safeties. They run a similar 3-3-5 defense to Mississippi State. It's the Rocky Long disciple kind of defense. So you're not going to see too different of a defensive approach from last week, which I guess is a benefit towards LSU. They've been focusing on this kind of defense, but don't count out the players of New Mexico. I keep calling it Mexico State. It's gonna happen all week. I'm probably gonna write it a couple of times. It's just gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean LSU has not played New Mexico yet in their program's history, so they have played New Mexico State a couple times though. So whenever I think New Mexico, I think New Mexico State, and I also get New Mexico mixed up with Nevada sometimes. I don't know why. I just do. Okay. Jarek Reed II is the safety to keep note of. He has had a fantastic season. He is one of the highest PFF graded defenders, period. And again, they haven't played crazy competition, but he's done. That's what I say whenever people is like, "Oh, they haven't played anybody." They've done what they should do against the competition that they've played. They've dominated, and linebacker Cody Moon is coming off of a monster game with 11 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for a loss. This is a defense that it's going to be a similar look to last week, and don't think just because it's New Mexico that they're not going to push you. Yeah, I know that their defensive coordinator does come from that Zach Arnett tree as well. I know they've worked together in the past. So you're right. You're going to see a very similar kind of style, I think. And, I think what really worked last week for LSU, we kind of saw it there in the second half. We talked about it a little bit too when we last did a podcast. there's a difference between playing fast and playing up tempo. And I think LSU really found something when they went up tempo, when they had Jaden get the ball out quickly, make his first or second read and get the ball to the playmakers. I think that's going to be huge. I'm going to be interested to see how John Emery looks after a week. I think you could probably surmise that he had a little bit of rust in that first half against Mississippi State, but I think he looked a lot better in that second half. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how he kind of progresses in his offensive role as well. I think that's going to be a big game, no doubt for Daniels in terms of his decision making and in terms of him hitting his receivers. You want to see an efficient night out of Daniels against an opponent like this, and I think LSU is going to be in pretty good shape. I would imagine LSU's in pretty good shape in this one. I think it's going to be really important for LSU to get kind of a fast start. That was something that's really plagued them in 2 of these 3 games so far. So, getting off to a fast start, just fixing some of the things on special teams, just kind of playing with the fundamentals and being a little bit more fundamentally sound, I think is what you really want to see against an opponent like this that you should be able to handle. But are there any other, takeaways you have from this game? Anything that you want to learn about these two teams, or do you think we've pretty much kind of touched on most of it?
I think we've kind of touched on it. You just want to look solid. You want to look good, and you want to. The goal for LSU is to have your starters sit at some point in this game. You want to play. You want to play fundamentally sound. You want to play. Yeah, you don't want this game to ever be in question. And we've seen SEC teams struggle with that against lesser opponents. So it's not something you can expect, but that's the goal, is to not have a hangover from your good performance. Take that momentum and then come out even better against a lesser opponent.
Yeah, I mean, just a couple of kind of notes here that are coming to mind. It sounds like it's going to be the same offensive line this weekend in terms of starters. You have Emory Jones over at right tackle. You're going to have Miles Frazier and Garrett Dellinger handling the guard positions. You're going to have Charles Turner at center, and then Will Campbell obviously at left tackle. So, there's going to be a consistent rotation, I think, for the first time all season. They've done a little bit of mixing and matching these first 3 weeks, trying to find the right combo, and it sounds like they found it. But Anthony Bradford will also be active for the offensive line. He's going to get some rotation snaps, and I think Tremont Shorts will as well. So it's going to be, I'm going to be watching the offensive line a little bit too here. I think it's going to be important that those guys go out and have a dominant performance. And I'm just really looking forward to seeing what those guys do. I guess we can move on a little bit here.
I also did want to note an interesting move that we've seen. We don't have any if it's permanent, but Fitzgerald West, as for now, has moved from the offensive line to the defensive line.
Right.
We haven't seen a ton of Fitzgerald West, but what do you think? Is there anything off the top of your head that you think that his style of play on the offense could translate?
Well, I know the last staff really recruited him, and he was kind of a hybrid player. They weren't really sure where his future was going to be, because he could play both sides of the line, and I think he's going to be a name to follow as kind of what his position looks like. LSU just had a player like that who seemingly switched every 6 months, and Joseph Evans. He was a guy that was one year an offensive lineman. The next several months he was going to be a nose tackle, and he moved back to the O-line. So I'm going to be interested to see where Fitzgerald sticks. He's an athlete. He's I think got a little bit of a ways to go in terms of being ready to knock knees with some of those guys in the SEC in terms of the big physical interior linemen. So maybe that's why they wanted to shift him to nose tackle, to where he can build a little bit more strength and where he can be kind of the aggressor instead of the kind of the O-lineman trying to block some of those bigger guys. So I'll be interested to see where he goes from here. But he's another one of those young guys that I guess you could see get some playing time if LSU kind of handles its business early in this game. I'm gonna be looking at Sage Ryan too. I think he really played well last week against Mississippi State, and I'm going to be curious to see if he gets some more slot reps and just kind of what his role looks like as we head into an Auburn game that is going to be, I think, LSU very advantageous for the defense considering what their quarterback situation is looking like right now for Auburn. So, I guess with that, we can move on to some of the other SEC games this week. I know that there's really a couple here that we're going to key in on. Arkansas, Texas A&M tomorrow night is going to be one that's going to be very interesting. You got Florida and Tennessee in the afternoon on CBS with with the Volunteers hosting the Gators. That's going to be another top 25 matchup. Just what are your early thoughts on the week's slate and just some of the games that you're going to be really looking at in terms of the SEC standings?
Well, it is also important to note and important to watch this weekend. It's not a high-profile matchup, but Auburn is playing Mizzou. Mm-hmm. LSU, of course, travels to Auburn next week, and TJ Finley's been banged up a little bit, and Zach Calzada has taken a red shirt this season. So as of right now, I think it's just Robbie Ashford, unless TJ Finley comes back. So that the quarterbacks are something to watch against for Auburn. And if Auburn drops this game at home to Mizzou, you're probably looking at a coach getting fired and a lot of turmoil heading into LSU's first road SEC game. So that's definitely something to watch.
And just I'll throw it in there. I mean, this is kind of setting up to be a classic LSU game of you go in there with a lot of high expectations, and then maybe the Tigers falter early and just don't get themselves back into it. It seems like there's always at least one game a year where LSU goes in with some confidence, with some momentum, and it just gets dashed. And that's kind of been the recent history.
Especially those Auburn games. Next week, we're going to have to figure out what our favorite Auburn memory is because there are a ton of crazy Auburn games.
Yeah, it's always one of those good matchups for LSU in terms of just always being entertaining, except for that 48-7 monstrosity a couple years ago where they got absolutely obliterated at Georgia.
Yeah. I got on the student section last year. I mean, on ESPN in the student section last year, whenever Bo Nix was running around. It was me in despair, but it was Bo Nix running around. But that was fun.
Oh, is that your profile picture on Twitter?
It was for a while. Yeah, it was for a while. Yeah. I'll bring that back for Auburn week.
Okay. Definitely.
But other than that, Georgia playing Kent State, that'll probably be a close one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. Number one, Georgia on upset alert. Yeah, Kent State.
And then another one LSU fans have to watch out for is Florida at Tennessee. Anthony Richardson still hasn't thrown a touchdown pass this season, which is insane. He does have 3 tackles, which is the best stat ever. He has 3 more tackles than he has touchdown passes through 3 games.
Hammer that home all season.
Oh my God! Well, until it evens out, because having 3 tackles and 1 passing touchdown is still not better. Not great. But obviously, those are 2 LSU opponents coming up soon. So another a good gauge of how you can watch one game and get a gauge of how 2 LSU opponents play. Because Tennessee, I have been high on Tennessee all year long, dating back to the preseason. They were a preseason top 15 team for me. I was all in on the Volunteers, and they've done nothing but prove my point, in my opinion, that they're a serious team this year. And Florida has reached the high of the highs and the low of the lows. So really just no clue what to see from them.
Up and down for Billy Napier to start out there at Florida for sure. I think a lot of us were a little bit surprised that they lost that game last week. It was, but they
didn't lose
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, and then they almost lost last week against USF in just a terrible performance overall from that team. So
especially after that week 1 where it looked like Richardson was going to be an early Heisman favorite, and
he looked really good.
Kind of come crashing back down to earth for him, but. Yeah, I mean, look, there's going to be lots of fun games to watch this weekend. It's getting to be about that time where there's going to be a lot of SEC on SEC matchups. You're going to get a lot of that next week too. But this is going to be a good game, I think, for LSU. you hate to use the word tune-up game, but it definitely feels like that for the Tigers.
Scared to use the tune-up because, well, to be fair, this is a little bit different than I think it was ESPN listed Tulane as a tune-up game for Kansas State, which I think is a little bit of a stretch.
That is.
Listen, Tulane's roll wave.
Yeah.
Another important thing to note, LSU takes on New Mexico at home at 6:30 p.m. kick, and it's going to be on ESPN Plus and the SEC Network Plus. If you're looking for the game on TV, you're not going to find it. It's one of those times where it's going to be really annoying to find. So just, keep trying.
Yeah, you're going to be either paying the $4 or $5 for the 1 month of ESPN Plus, or you get to listen to the magical Chris Blair and the LSU Tigers Network. I know those guys do a great job every week. So
I do have a gripe with ESPN. While we're on the topic, ESPNU should be included with ESPN Plus.
You would think so.
It makes no sense.
I don't know what you have to buy to get ESPNU. I guess you. I think you have
to have cable to get ESPN, which doesn't make any sense. If you're gonna have a streaming service that people pay for, just put your channels on there. It doesn't make any sense.
Basic cable doesn't carry ESPNU.
Yeah, you have to buy an extra program, but you get SEC Network, so it really doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
because Vanderbilt, Alabama kicks off at the same time on SEC Network, which is why LSU is getting pushed to streaming only.
Yep. Well, it'll be a fun weekend. I'm really looking forward to this weekend. It's going to be a good one. Should be I would imagine a pretty relaxing one for LSU, but you never know. I think there's going to be some big plays in there. Definitely some interesting matchups to look at, and some guys that I think are going to get a lot of opportunity. I would like to see Garrett Nussmeier get a little bit of a shot here to kind of maybe rectify himself from that game 2 weeks ago. That's probably just been sitting on his mind for the last 2 weeks. I'm sure he would like to come out and get his feet wet a little bit and make some good plays. So if LSU's able to pull away, would hope that he gets a little bit of an opportunity, and maybe Walker Howard does as well. So, I think we've kind of touched on most of what we wanted to talk about. Like we always say, give us a like on YouTube. Follow us on your podcast wherever you get those from. We'll have a great weekend. We'll be back here on Sunday, recapping the game and looking ahead to Auburn next week. But with that, I'm Glenn West. He's Dylan Sanders, and we'll see you guys real soon.